Ladies and gentlemen, I came here today to tell somebody you are not crazy. You are crazy like a fox. They laughed at you. They whispered about you. They said, that one's lost their mind. But what they didn't know is that you weren't losing your mind. You were losing their limitations. You weren't going crazy. You were stepping into strategy. You weren't falling apart. You were breaking out. See, the fox is not reckless. The fox is strategic. The fox is not loud. The fox is precise. The fox doesn't waste energy running in circles. It moves with purpose. And I need you to understand today that everything they mocked about you, everything they misunderstood about you, everything they criticized about you, it was never weakness, it was wisdom. They said, why would you start that business in this economy? Why would you go back to school at your age? Why would you step out when you could play it safe? Because they don't see what you see. They don't know what you know. They don't feel what you feel. But a fox doesn't need the approval of the farm animals to know it's a hunter. A fox doesn't wait for permission to move. It moves when the moment is right. I came to talk to the people who have been underestimated, the ones who've been counted out, the ones who've had to sit in silence while others misunderstood the method to your madness. Listen to me, you are not crazy. You are calculated. You see, the fox knows something the crowd doesn't. There is power in moving differently. If you move like everybody else, you will end up where everybody else is. But when you step out on faith, when you break away from the pack, when you dare to do what's never been done before, that's when you step into destiny. Noah looked crazy when he built the ark before a single drop of rain fell. Joseph looked crazy when he believed in his dream from the pit to the palace. David looked crazy when he ran toward a giant with just a slingshot and a stone. But let me tell you something. Every world changer, every history maker, every visionary had a moment where they had to look crazy before they won big. So let them doubt you. Let them whisper. Let them call you out of your name. Because the next time they see you, you won't just be crazy. You'll be victorious. You are not crazy. You are strategic. You are not reckless. You are relentless. You are not confused. You are cold. And when it's all said and done, they will have no choice but to look at you and say, they weren't crazy after all. They were just crazy like a fox. Somebody shout, I'm crazy like a fox. Now walk in it, run in it, believe in it, because this is your season. People will call you crazy when they don't understand your vision. They'll look at your plans, your dreams, your ambitions, and shake their heads because it doesn't fit into their limited perspective. But what they don't realize is that what looks like foolishness to them is actually wisdom in disguise. When you start thinking differently, moving differently, and believing differently, you will always attract critics. The ones who play it safe, who never step outside their comfort zones, who only walk on well-paved roads, they'll never understand why you're willing to take the path that looks uncertain. They'll call you reckless, unrealistic, even delusional, but that's only because they can't see what you see. Every great innovator, every history maker, every game changer was once called crazy. When Thomas Edison was working on the light bulb, people laughed at him until the world lit up. When the Wright brothers said man could fly, people mocked them until airplanes filled the sky. When Steve Jobs envisioned a world where computers could fit in the palm of your hand, they said it was impossible until the iPhone became a global necessity. They were all called crazy until they weren't. And the same will happen to you. Your ideas, your dreams, your vision may not make sense to those who live by logic alone, but that's because they are looking with their eyes while you are seeing with faith. They are calculating the risks while you are moving in destiny. They are measuring the odds, but you are trusting the outcome. The fox knows something that the other animals don't. It doesn't need to be big to be dangerous. It doesn't need to be loud to be effective. And it doesn't need to be understood to be victorious. The fox moves with confidence, knowing that wisdom is often mistaken for madness by those who can't see beyond the surface. So when they call you crazy, don't argue. Don't try to explain yourself to people who aren't meant to understand your journey. Just smile, nod, and keep moving, because one day the same people who doubted you will be the ones wondering how you made it happen. And when they finally see the results, they'll realize you weren't crazy. You were just crazy like a fox. The fox is not reckless, it is strategic. It doesn't move without thinking, it doesn't act without calculating, and it doesn't chase anything that isn't worth its energy. From the outside, it may look like the fox is just running wild, taking unnecessary risks, making bold moves that don't make sense. But what looks reckless to the untrained eye is actually a carefully designed plan. People will call you foolish when they don't understand the method behind your movement. They will say, "Why are you stepping out now? Why are you making that decision? Why are you leaving the familiar for the unknown?" They think risk is failure, but what they don't realize is that risk is the bridge to reward. Every great achievement requires a moment where you have to step out without all the answers. The fox knows when to move and when to wait. It knows that sometimes the best opportunities don't come from chasing what's in front of you, but from setting yourself up to catch what's coming. And that is exactly how you have to think. Your steps may not make sense to everyone, but they are leading you to something greater. You are not moving without reason. You are moving because you have heard a call that others cannot hear. When Peter stepped out of the boat to walk on water, it looked crazy. The other disciples stayed back, watching, calculating, playing it safe. But Peter understood something. They were waiting for proof, but he was moving on faith. And as long as his eyes stayed on Jesus, he did the impossible. What looked like a reckless risk was actually the beginning of a miracle. The difference between those who stay stuck and those who step into purpose is not intelligence, talent, or resources. It's courage. The courage to trust when it doesn't make sense. The courage to believe when others doubt. The courage to take the leap when everyone else is waiting for a guarantee. Because the truth is, faith will always look like foolishness to those who only live by logic. You are not out of control. You are in position. You are not making blind moves. You are following divine direction. And when the time comes, the same people who thought you were taking a risk will be the ones asking you how you did it. Because when you move in faith, when you trust in something greater than yourself, when you understand that the greatest rewards come to those who dare to step out, you will always win in the end. They may not understand you now, but they will later. Because you are not reckless. You are not lost. You are not foolish. You are just crazy like a fox. The fox doesn't just run, it maneuvers. It doesn't rely on brute strength like a lion or raw speed like a cheetah. It wins by outthinking its opposition. It studies the terrain, calculates its options, and moves in ways that others don't expect. And that is exactly how you must approach your journey. Some people believe that success belongs to the loudest, the biggest, or the strongest. But the truth is, success belongs to the smartest. It belongs to those who know how to shift when circumstances change, who know how to move when others are stuck, and who know how to find an opening when it looks like there's no way out. The fox doesn't run in a straight line when it's being chased. It zigzags. It doubles back. It confuses the enemy because it knows that winning isn't about speed. It's about strategy. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to be the most talented. You just have to be wise enough to use what you have in ways that others never considered. David wasn't the biggest or strongest when he stood before Goliath. If he had fought Goliath the way Goliath expected, a battle of brute force, he would have lost. But David didn't fight by the enemy's rules. He didn't try to use Saul's heavy armor. He didn't try to swing a sword against a giant. He used what he had, a sling and a stone. A simple weapon, but in the hands of someone who understood strategy, it became unstoppable. You have to know when to move, when to wait, and when to strike. Some doors won't open by force. They will open by wisdom. Some battles won't be won by fighting head on. They will be won by outmaneuvering the opposition. Some breakthroughs won't come by doing what everyone else does. They will come by doing what nobody thought to try. Some breakthroughs won't come by doing what everyone else does. They will come by doing what nobody thought to try. The fox doesn't panic when it's being chased. It stays calm, it studies the situation, and it finds a way out. And that's exactly what you must do. You may be facing opposition. You may have people working against you. You may feel like the odds are stacked against you. But if you learn how to move with wisdom instead of worry, you will always find a way. The enemy wants you to believe that your only options are fight or flight, but the fox knows better. Sometimes the greatest victories come not by force, but by finesse, not by power, but by precision, not by running harder, but by moving smarter. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to be the fastest. You just have to be wise enough to know when to move and bold enough to do it. And when you do, the same people who underestimated you will be left wondering how you won when the odds were against you. Because you are not ordinary. You are not predictable. You are not average. You are crazy like a fox. If you follow the crowd, you will never lead. If you wait for everyone to agree with you, you will never move. If you live for approval, you will die in mediocrity. The greatest danger to your destiny is the fear of looking different. The fox doesn't run with the herd. It doesn't try to be like the lion, the bear, or the wolf. It is fully aware that it was designed differently, and it embraces that difference. The fox moves alone if it has to, because it understands that survival and success don't come from fitting in, they come from standing out. There will come a time when you have to make a decision. Will you stay where it's safe, or will you step into the unknown? Will you shrink yourself to fit into places that were never meant for you, or will you rise to the level that you were called to? Some people will never fulfill their destiny, not because they aren't capable, but because they are too afraid to walk alone. The crowd will tell you this is the way it's always been done. But just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean it's the best way. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every revolution happened because somebody decided to break free from the herd mentality. Noah had to break away when he built an ark in the middle of a drought. Abraham had to break away when he left everything familiar to follow a promise. Moses had to break away when he stood before Pharaoh and demanded freedom. They all had a choice: stay with the crowd or step into their calling. And if you are going to step into what's meant for you, you will have to make that same choice. You cannot lead if you are afraid of loneliness. You cannot create if you are afraid of criticism. You cannot walk in your purpose if you are constantly looking over your shoulder, waiting for validation from people who don't even believe in themselves. The fox doesn't care if the other animals approve of its path. It moves because it was built to move differently. And you were not built to blend in. You were built to break through. Yes, breaking away is uncomfortable. Yes, stepping out on faith is scary. Yes, moving in a direction that others don't understand will make you feel like an outcast. But I promise you this, the ones who laugh at you now will be the ones trying to follow you later. You cannot be both legendary and ordinary. You cannot be both called and comfortable. You cannot be both powerful and passive. You have to decide, will you live by their opinions or will you live by your purpose? Because if you're going to reach your destiny, you're going to have to embrace the fact that you weren't meant to fit in. You weren't meant to be understood by everyone. You weren't meant to be like the rest. You were meant to be different. And that's why you are not crazy. You are crazy like a fox. Logic says play it safe. Logic says wait until the timing is perfect. Logic says don't take the risk until you have every detail figured out. But faith doesn't operate by logic. Faith steps out before the evidence appears. Faith moves before the pieces fit. Faith believes when there is no proof, because proof comes after the step, not before it. The fox doesn't wait for ideal conditions to move. It doesn't stand still, analyzing every obstacle, overthinking every decision. No, the fox sees an opportunity and goes for it. It moves on instinct. It trusts what it knows, even if others don't understand. And that's exactly how faith works. If you live by logic alone, you will always talk yourself out of your destiny. Logic will tell you the business idea won't work. Logic will remind you of every failed attempt. Logic will keep you stuck, waiting for guarantees that will never come. But faith moves forward, even when the path isn't clear. Faith understands that the blessing is on the other side of obedience. Peter would have never walked on water if he waited for the waves to calm down first. The walls of Jericho would have never fallen if the Israelites had waited for proof before marching. David would have never defeated Goliath if he had waited for the logical choice of armor and a bigger weapon. Every great victory, every miracle, every breakthrough happened because someone was willing to look foolish before they won. Faith requires you to step when you don't have all the answers. It requires you to believe even when your circumstances don't match the promise. It requires you to move forward when common sense tells you to sit still. Because what seems crazy in the moment will make perfect sense when you reach the other side. They will call you crazy for trusting God's timing. They will call you crazy for believing in something they can't see. They will call you crazy for moving before you have all the details. But Noah looked crazy until it started raining. Moses looked crazy until the Red Sea parted. Jesus looked crazy until the stone rolled away. Faith will always seem illogical to those who don't have it. But the people who walk by faith, the people who refuse to let fear dictate their steps, the people who trust when others doubt, those are the ones who see the impossible become reality. So don't let logic talk you out of what faith is trying to pull you into. Don't let reason make you hesitate when destiny is calling you forward. Don't let the fear of looking foolish keep you from stepping into something greater, because this is not the season to wait, it's the season to walk. This is not the time to doubt, it's the time to move. This is not the moment to hesitate, it's the moment to believe. They may not understand you now, but they will later, because what looks like foolishness today will be the testimony of your victory tomorrow. You are not reckless. You are not naive. You are not crazy. You are just crazy like a fox. When it's all said and done, the results will speak for themselves. You won't have to argue with those who doubted you. You won't have to explain yourself to the ones who misunderstood you. You won't have to convince anyone that you were right all along, because the evidence will be undeniable. The fox doesn't waste time proving itself to animals who don't understand its nature. It doesn't pause its movement to explain its strategy. It doesn't argue with the critics who question its methods. It just wins. It moves, it works, it executes, and eventually the results do all the talking. Right now, people may be looking at your journey and shaking their heads. They may think you're wasting time chasing dreams, believing in something that doesn't make sense. But stay the course, because the same people who dismissed you will be the ones trying to figure out how you made it. Joseph's brothers threw him in a pit because they thought his dreams were nonsense. They sold him into slavery because they didn't believe he would ever rise. But years later, those same brothers stood before him, desperate for help, realizing that the one they rejected was the one who had the answer. David was overlooked, underestimated, and left in the field while others were being considered for greatness. But when the moment came, the one they ignored was the one who was anointed. Jesus was mocked, beaten, and crucified. They rolled a stone over his tomb, thinking they had seen the last of him. But 3 days later, the same people who thought it was over had to witness the greatest comeback in history. I don't know who needs to hear this, but the people who wrote you off will have to watch you rise. The ones who doubted you will have to see you succeed. The ones who thought you were crazy will have no choice but to acknowledge that you were right. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to argue. You don't have to defend yourself. Just let the results speak. Because when your breakthrough comes, when your vision becomes reality, when your faith turns into fulfillment, they won't be able to deny that you were never crazy. You were just ahead of your time. You will be the one they come to for advice. You will be the one they ask for guidance. You will be the one they look at and say, we didn't see it before, but now we understand. Because the greatest revenge is success. The best response to doubt is results. And the loudest proof of faith is the manifestation of what you believed. So don't waste time trying to convince them. Don't waste energy trying to explain. Just keep building, keep working, keep trusting, keep moving, because when the moment comes, when the vision unfolds, when the dream becomes reality, you won't have to say a word. Your success will say it for you. And when they finally see it, when they finally recognize what was inside of you all along, they'll have no choice but to admit they weren't crazy after all. They were just crazy like a fox. They called you crazy. They laughed at your vision. They questioned your decisions. They doubted your faith. But what they didn't realize is that you weren't just moving blindly, you were moving strategically. You weren't just taking risks. You were trusting the process. You weren't being reckless, you were being led. Because the fox may look unpredictable, but it knows exactly what it's doing. It moves with wisdom. It adapts to its environment. It doesn't need approval to win. And just like the fox, you don't need validation to walk in your calling. Every great leader, every world changer, every history maker had a moment when people misunderstood them. They were called foolish. They were called reckless. They were called unrealistic. But they didn't stop. They kept moving. They kept believing. And when their vision became reality, the same people who doubted them had to admit they were right all along. And that will be your story. The people who called you crazy will have to watch you rise. The ones who thought you were making a mistake will have to witness your breakthrough. The ones who laughed will have to listen, because the results will speak for themselves. So don't back down. Don't shrink yourself to fit into places that were never meant for you. Don't waste time trying to explain yourself to people who aren't meant to understand. Just keep building, keep believing, and keep moving. Because you are not ordinary. You are not weak. You are not lost. You are bold. You are wise. You are unstoppable. You are crazy like a fox.